TNKR Media.
The Goldwaters is brought to you by Goldwater-Adler, shaping the history of Canadian family law since 1981.
The Goldwaters vous est présenté par Goldwater-Adler, modeler l'histoire du droit familial canadien depuis 1981.
Welcome back to the Goldwaters. I'm your moderator, Dan Delmar, here with Dr. Samantha, who is doing a solo podcast on a topic, Samantha, that is tough to tackle and one that you're really interested in, and that is addiction. How did we come to this topic today?
Well, I think there's been this ongoing discussion in the press about the opioid epidemic and fentanyl, and then at the same time, and what a problem that is and what we should do about it. Well, at the same time, there's a bunch of stories about cannabis being legalized or decriminalized at this point, and just that juxtaposition between the two just sort of brought it to the forefront. And I just was really interested in speaking more about that and really thinking, doing a bit more of a deep dive into what people's experiences are with addiction and what their journey is like there.
Are you seeing a rise in addiction, or is this something that is perhaps media-fueled when it comes to the fentanyl crisis?
I think there's been, as far as I'm aware, there's been a rise in terms of opioid and fentanyl addiction for sure. I'm not sure in terms of other substances at this point, but it's something that you're hearing a lot more talk about. Other types of addictions, more and more behavioral addictions. So like gambling, sex addiction. People start talking about phone addictions, video game addictions, and so I think it's something that's still really at the forefront.
So today we're going to be speaking with Jason Rockman. He's a radio announcer here in Montreal, also a pop culture columnist with CTV News nationally, and he's the lead singer of a metal band called Slaves on Dope, which would have been very popular for well over 20 years. So Jason's story is interesting because he's been in the entertainment industry where it's maybe a little bit more common to have some addiction issues, and he's going to talk a bit about his ongoing struggle to maintain his sobriety, which he's done for well over 25 years now.
Yep, I think he actually just hit 26 years, which is really fantastic. Yeah, and I really wanted to get a chance to, of course, I heard about Slaves on Dope when I was a kid, when I was a teenager. I remember hearing about his group, and I was excited to be able to talk to him today, and particularly about his journey, because to be able to maintain sobriety for that long is no easy feat, particularly in the entertainment industry, and really just wanted to get his view on it. What's his journey been like? What advice would he give going forward? What does he think has been really important to him?
He's one of my favorite people in media, a really authentic, kind, compassionate man, and I think you'll enjoy the conversation.
So let me ask you, July is an important time for you, right? Isn't this like your sobriety?
July 25th. Yep.
July 25th. Well,
26 years.
Frig, congratulations. Yeah. That's a long time. That's a long time. So tell me about that. Tell me about a bit about what your journey has been, because you've really jumped around to a bunch of different things in terms of different professions, and it seems like things were pretty tumultuous early on. I'm just dying to know. Tell me.
Well, I mean, basically, I got sober at 21, which is the time when most people are just going out and discovering their drinking. But
when had you started? Like, when did the addiction started?
The earliest memory I have. There's the earliest memory I have of being an alcoholic before going into AA, and there's the earliest memory of being an alcoholic after AA. So the before one would be when I had my first drink.
Okay.
Once I got a bit of program in me and I understood how addiction worked, my earliest memory was way earlier than before having a first drink.
I'm really interested in that. So so when was the first? So when was the first drink?
First drink was probably around 12, 13.
12 or 13.
Yeah.
And was that
Christmas time?
It's like taken from. Did your parents know? Was that something they gave to you, or you just snuck into the pantry?
At a party, an older stepbrother ended up giving me a couple of drinks, and it was funny, and I felt I was goofy, and everyone laughed, and it was, oh wow, this is fun.
Yeah, and actually I can reflect on that too. I think my first drink was probably at a different path, but I think my first drink was around that same time too. I think of all things at like a Passover Seder or something.
Exactly.
And just got one of those sick, and it didn't turn out that great.
Yeah, I mean, I remember from 12, 13 trying it a couple of times. really where it started to switch was about 14, 15, where it really kicked in. And then once I tried pot for the first time, it was like the two together. From about 15 to the time I stopped, I pretty much think I was buzzed in one way or another every day.
Okay. And then I mentioned that, but before you said that when you did start attending groups that you dated, you put your addiction date earlier.
Because
earlier. I'm curious about that.
Because I'm sure you're familiar with 12 steps and how this 12 step works. And when you start looking back and you start to think of why you drank and what alcohol did, like for me, alcohol pretty much just masked symptoms, and it ended up giving me a false sense of courage. It made me, I was able to get out of my shell. I was able to talk to people. I was a little less apprehensive, I guess. But when I think about being an alcoholic and the memories of not feeling like I fit in, it was really in the schoolyard. I used to go to Willingdon.
Okay.
And NDG. And I remember being in the schoolyard and seeing a bunch of kids, maybe, I don't know, a couple 100 feet away from me in the schoolyard talking, looking back and immediately thinking in my head, they must be talking about me.
And that's like elementary school?
Yeah.
Really
yeah. And I remember feeling, wow. And I remember having that, and everybody has that a little bit of paranoia. Like you walk into a room and everyone stops talking. You're like, oh, what are they thinking? And the older I got, and the more social situations I would get into, I would want to be somewhat inebriated before, because it would make it so much easier, because those thoughts wouldn't really matter anymore.
So you were doing it for socially, like, because
I
you
think
were feeling
so.
Really anxious in the situation.
Yeah, I think there was a certain amount of that. There was, and there was also just liking it. But there's a critical point in most people's drinking that it switches. Not most people, but most alcoholics drinking, is where it switches from fun to dependence, and
where it becomes coping.
Right.
You know, instead of just like hanging with buddies, having a good time, it becomes like, no, this is a pain I'm trying to.
Exactly. And it's not something that you ever think it's going to happen, but it ends up happening, and all of a sudden you're caught up in this. Well, wait a minute, I'm constantly looking for that original feeling, and it just never, it switches.
So you feel it's like that you keep chasing the original high, or it's this, there's some talk about, in terms of a model of how addiction kind of goes forward, is that it's less of a disease and more of a, you have this pain, the substance, the alcohol and pot in this case kind of decreases that pain. You get a nice high, and then you feel worse when you come down, and then you have to medicate that kind of worse and start chasing.
Yes, but you're not aware, at least I wasn't aware of any of that until I sobered up, because then I was aware of the patterns, because it was all...
Well, then you're just in autopilot, like you're just stuck on that hamster wheel, and you don't necessarily realize what's happening.
When you get off of that and you do get some help and you do get some perspective, that's when you're able to look at it and go, oh, okay, that was what I was doing. But when you're in the middle of it, I mean, it's like that for anyone that's in the middle of a cycle, or like, I use the analogy of the hamster wheel a lot too, because it's a lot of times in life you just feel like you're on that hamster wheel. But I find the older I get, especially in sobriety, this too shall pass. That always happens. I mean, no matter how angry I get, no matter how sad I get, I always know that at the end of the day, it will pass. Tomorrow's another day, and it's not the end of the world. These are just things that happen, and you've got to take them in stride. And I'm just grateful that I have that clarity now.
How did you get to that clarity? Because that's a fantastic point, and it's something that something I often work on with clients is that these are emotions and they're okay, and they're gonna, as you say, they're gonna do their course. They're gonna do their thing. They're gonna go up and down, and you're still okay, and you still have control over this, and it's not gonna kill you. You just gotta kind of wait it out.
I always look
to cope in the meantime.
I think for me, the thing I realize is that, and obviously this is from being in AA for 25 years and almost
Do you still
26.
go to meetings?
As much as I can, and it's tough. It's tough now because of my shift with work.
Yeah, no doubt. And with 2 kids.
Yeah, with 2 kids, and life
yeah.
just gets in the way. But I have a very solid base. I have a very solid program. I still have a bunch of guys that I talk with. I've constantly have people in my life that are coming in and out that will talk to me about addiction or talk to me about their drinking or what they're going through. So I'm always working my program, and I live my life where I'm constantly working my steps.
Okay.
So it's almost unconscious now. It's like, I guess it's like an athlete that gets on the ice, or like a hockey player that gets on the ice and knows what to do. Like I know what to do with my sobriety. I know what moves to make.
How did you get to that point though of, because especially when you're coming off, I imagine especially when you're coming off that type of addiction and there's all this pain that's been built up for so long that's not been coped with, and then you have to deal with, coming sober. One of the worst parts, is just, I imagine, is dealing with the consequences. Like, once you're sober, looking around saying, fuck, like, what did I do? What just happened here? How do you ride through that pain? Because it's the toughest thing. Is the hardest time to cope with that pain is just as you're coming sober, and that's the time that you need to the most.
There was so much stuff that had come right before me getting sober that was there were a lot of things that had happened with friends of mine, with myself. I was relatively lucky. Nothing really bad happened to me. I mean, I got into some trouble with the law when I was 18. It's ironic that we're here. I'm glad I can come into a place like this where it's a lot more...
into a law firm. Well, this would be... Yeah, this is more of a different stage of life. Law firm. It's like the family law firm. So you're also lucky not to be in here for that part.
Done that already too.
Yeah, there we go.
But it's good to... for me, it's good to look back on the way things went and to look at exactly the reasons why I got sober, because I never forget. I was pretty much sick and tired of being sick and tired, which is a cliche that you hear all the time. I had a really close friend of mine that was in a drinking and driving accident. He hit a family head on, killed the entire family. Jeez. And the person that was in the car with him lived, and he died. So I remember at that point, all the friends that I hung out with at the time, we were all drinking and driving. We were all daily users, and we were all really, really sad when that happened. And I remember about a week, maybe a couple weeks later, everyone was back to drinking and driving. No one had gotten the lesson. It just it didn't sink in, and it really, really hit me. And it took me about maybe another month and a half, 2 months to live with that pain and to make that decision. But the crazy thing is, no one ever spoke to me about my drinking. No one ever told me maybe you should stop. I didn't have anybody.
Did your parents notice anything?
Oh yeah. What
did they say?
Well, I had been on my own from a very young age. Like my parents were split up at 9. I had
like 10 years old. You had an apartment and a girlfriend.
16.
16. Yeah. That's still pretty young.
16. Yeah. I was really, really young. So 16. By the time I was 18, 19, I was in my own place. I lived with my grandmother for a while, which, when you're living with your little Jewish grandmother, there's not much discipline that's going on. I mean,
God bless them. No.
And I love I loved my grandma. I mean, we were really, really close. But I was kind of pushed aside. I was kind of like, I don't think anybody really knew what to do with me, and there was also that.
Were you
sense
like the trouble kid, and nobody knew what to do with?
I was always a nice kid. Yeah. I was never a bad kid, but I got into a lot of trouble.
Okay, so not like violence trouble, but more
no, just
like school trouble, truancy.
Oh, I was a horrible student. I was a horrible
bad
student.
grades and calls from teachers, that sort of thing.
Yeah, okay. and I just had no fear when it came to authority or anything. So I was like the guy in Breakfast Club.
Okay.
I was like, what's his name's character? Judd Nelson. I was like Judd Nelson's character. Okay. I just didn't, I wasn't a bad guy, but I had a huge wall up. Yeah. And I think when I ended up finally getting sober, it was such a relief, because I woke up one morning. I had a job at a grocery store at a Provigo in TMR. And I'd been working there for a long time, and I really, really liked my boss, and he'd give me chance after chance, and I kept coming late. I kept missing work. And, when I look back on all this stuff now as an adult, big deal. It was like I was a bag boy at a grocery shop. Yeah. But at the time, it was a really, really big deal for me, because this was my job. It's what paid my rent, and I kept messing up. Yeah. And he would always give me chance after chance, because...
Did you feel you were letting him down, or was it...
Yeah, oh, for sure I was letting him down. And I liked him. He was a really, really nice guy, and I liked where I worked. But at the same time, once I started drinking, that was it. And I would remember waking up in the morning, really, really hungover, maybe having a beer in the morning just to steady off. And I was already at that point. Yeah. Going to work, smoking a joint at my morning break, doing the same thing at lunchtime, doing the same thing at my afternoon break. And by the time 2:00 had come around, I was already looking at what to do for that night. And I remember waking up in the morning saying, there's no way that I'm going anywhere tonight. I'm coming back and I'm going to bed. I'm exhausted. And it's just like the hamster wheel. It just kept going and kept going. So by the time I decided to get sober, I was really, really ready for a change. But the crazy thing is I still don't know where I got that initial seed planted, because I woke up after that incident had happened with my friend.
Yeah.
And being being maybe a couple of weeks, or I can't remember if it was a month after, and nothing had really changed in my circle of friends. And waking up from a blackout, again, not showing up to work and saying to myself, oh man, he had given me my last notice. Like, I'm done. I'm going to lose my job. And I remember waking up saying, I have to call AA. And this was before the internet. This was before phones. So, you had to do the old school call 411 and ask for the number for Alcoholics Anonymous. And I remember getting on the phone with someone and them telling me where there was a meeting. And I lived in NDG at the time. So I went to my first meeting on a Saturday night. And I immediately felt relief when I walked through the door. Immediately.
Why? What was it that really connected?
I think I was just so ready for a change, and I just needed something.
Was it just that feeling of like,
I think it was.
I'm really doing something now.
Yes,
like
it's like if you're, it's like when you're sitting on the couch and you're eating a tub of Haagen-Dazs and you're saying to yourself, okay, I got to do something, and you finally join the gym and you go to that first time, and that feeling you get when you leave.
It's a feeling like
I've got control.
I'm like a good girl. I'm a good boy.
Well, that's it. I've got control
yeah.
of this now. I know where I'm going to go with this now. Like I've got the bull by the horns, and that's how I really felt when I walked in. And since that moment, I've felt nothing but gratitude for finding the program.
Okay.
And all the time that I've been in AA and all the time that I've been sober, it's the one decision that was non-negotiable. I'm never going to drink again.
Okay.
Now, was I perfect my entire time of sobriety? No. Did I do a lot of things that I wish I wouldn't have done? Yeah. I mean, I wasn't that bad, but at the end of the day, the one thing that mattered to me was that as long as I don't drink today, I'm good. And
were you able to maintain the not drinking today? Like when you say that there were things that you slipped on, you mean in terms of...
No, drugs, alcohol, I've been completely stone cold sober it'll be 26 years this July.
Yeah.
But there's still behavior. There's the isms. Because I really believe when you have alcoholism, you take away the alcohol, you still have the isms.
I read an article that you're writing, you were talking about the isms, that, you stop the alcohol, but the isms, they linger.
Yes, and that's what the 12 steps...
What isms are you referring to there? Like, what are your isms that stick
personally,
around?
I mean, there's, it took me a while to grow up, and I was in a band.
Yeah. Were you,
sober
when did you start performing?
6 months after I sobered up.
Okay.
Yeah. Before that, I was in theater school, so I was always performing.
Okay.
I've been performing as long as I can remember in some way or another. I just liked entertaining people, and I still do.
Yeah.
But
interesting with that sort of social anxiety.
I know.
That there's still such an urge to be able to perform.
Every time I go to do something, I'm still super nervous inside. But I've learned how to deal with it so much that I just go on autopilot, and I can just...
how do you just make that shift? Like
I just realized that fear is something that you just need to face. And if you face fear, you can... It's funny. Did you ever watch Lost?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a scene with Jack when he's talking about operating. Mm-hmm. And he talks about how he was so fearful to operate. And the fear, he said, I made a decision. I'll let the fear wash over me, and I'll count. I think he said, I'll count to 10. Yeah. And I'll let the fear into me, and I'll let it do its thing, but then it's gone. But I'll let it do it for 10 seconds. And that is exactly how I feel.
Really? Do you do a count also with
No, I don't do a count. But I mean...
you're like, I'm going to roll with this.
Oh, I know this feeling. I know this feeling. I know what you're trying to do. Go.
Yeah.
You're not going to... And because of that, I'm somewhat fearless.
Okay.
With a lot of things. And I've always had that in me. I've always been, when I was talking about being in high school and being kind of not a bad kid, but defiant. I still have that in me. But it's very positive now, because I think it's something that's made me able to do tons of things in my life. Otherwise I would have been stopped by fear. I mean, so many people I see around me are crippled by fear.
Yeah.
And they can't. It stops them from doing so many things in their lives. And I just don't. It's non-negotiable. Like not drinking. It's the same kind of decision. Like, I will not let fear rule me.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about that, because it's something that, that personally, and even in my practice, like, I've made a lot of shifts in terms of dealing with fear. And I think initially when I started off and in my training, it was really like, okay, fear is bad.
Mm-hmm.
Anxiety is bad. Fear is bad. If I'm feeling it, do whatever I can to kind of shut it down. If a client's feeling it, especially if they're feeling it in session, okay, I got to do something, like get them to do some deep breathing, get them to calm down, talk back to it. And over time, my approach has changed a lot. Mm-hmm. And it's been much more of kind of, almost as you're saying before, welcoming fear and just saying, fear is doing its best. It's just trying to help out. And it's trying its best and has a really important job, but it's kind of dumb.
Yeah.
And so my job is just to welcome it compassionately and kind of educate it, like, okay, buddy, like, I see what you're trying to do there. Thank you, but
you can fuck off now.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I got this, buddy. Like, I got this. This shit's important to me. Yeah. And how do you feel? Because you're saying, because it's an interesting thing, because you're saying that you recognize the fear, you let it in, and then you're like, all right, enough now. Do you feel you have an adversarial relationship with fear, or that it's just a...
I think it depends. I mean, in certain situations, it doesn't really affect me anymore. Like if I have to go on stage and do something, if I have to, like just this past weekend, I hosted a panel with Danny Trejo, who's one of my favorite actors. He was at Comic-Con. And, there's about 3,000 people in the room. And I mean,
so definitely just kind of...
No, not at all.
Really?
Nothing. That doesn't scare me.
Okay.
Because I've done that so much.
Yeah.
Doing other situations, maybe in social settings, let's say I have to go to a 5 set and it's very corporate.
Yeah.
I'll walk in and, I'm the tattooed guy and it's like, ooh, like, do I qualify? But I know I qualify because otherwise I wouldn't have been invited. Yeah. So sometimes there's a bit of that. And what you end up realizing is that everybody feels that way when they walk into a social situation. Everybody feels a little goofy. Everybody feels a little shy. And I don't know. I've just gotten better at it over the years, and it doesn't really affect me. But I recognize it. I know when it's there.
Yeah.
But I have to brave through it sometimes. And sometimes I'm in situations like I had to host. I got asked to host Israel Day.
Okay.
And I kind of was on the fence with doing it. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. But I did it.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel comfortable doing it.
Okay.
It just made me say, this isn't really where I want to be right now, but I'm doing it and I'm getting paid to do it. And I agreed to do it and I'm committed to do it. But I remember doing it saying, like there was part of me that was like, I just don't want to be here. I want to leave.
Yeah.
But I did it. And I put on a brave face and no one would know any different or any better from, I did what I had to do. But I wasn't exactly thrilled to be doing it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm in situations like that where I say, why did I say yes to this?
Do you find that you tend to be impulsive, like in those cases, or say yes to things that you normally wouldn't want to?
No, I'm a lot better at saying no.
Yeah.
I've really learned how to say no.
Do you think that was something that fed into the isms early on, was the difficulty saying no, like trying to be too pleasing?
I think when you're if you're a people pleaser, and if you like, and I know a lot of alcoholics, a lot of people pleasers that end up having problems with substance because you give so much and there's nothing left for you. And at the end of the day, you sometimes you just feel depleted, and that still happens sometimes. I mean, I'm very giving, but my radar is pretty good.
Okay.
Like I'm pretty good with
recognizing what's sacrosanct for you and what are the things that keep you grounded and the things that you need.
Yeah.
The line I like to use, or even think for myself, is like, your needs end where mine begin. Mm. Yeah. And that's it. Like, my needs need to get met before I can deal with anyone else's.
Well, and what it comes down to is if you're not happy with yourself, you can't really help anyone else be happy. Do you know what I mean? Like, you've got to take care of yourself, because if you're not taking care of yourself, it's gonna bleed into other relationships or into your work. And I always think, as much as I have so many other people in my life that depend on me, if I'm not taking care of me, then it's going to affect all my other relationships.
You have nothing left to give at that point.
Yeah. And it's, and also, I mean, we're human, right? We make mistakes. We screw up sometimes, but I'm a work in progress, and I always will be. Like, I never look at this as, okay, I've arrived. It's like, no, I'm still walking. And I'm going to be walking. And that's the fun of it, is if you're always looking to arrive somewhere, what are you going to do when you get there?
Let me ask you something, because as I'm listening to you talk, I'm like, do you meditate? Do you do mindfulness meditation?
It's part of my program, but it's probably the shittiest step that I do. Like, my 11th step is really crappy.
Okay.
And that's the constant struggle of the higher power with me. Yeah. Because in AA, you have to come to believe in a higher power as you understand it. So what I love about the program is that you're never asked to follow any kind of God. Your interpretation of God, or your interpretation of a higher power, is up to you. So it can be anything that you feel comfortable with. And that's what I always loved about Alcoholics Anonymous, is that I would be standing in a room with 10 people that are all from completely different walks of life, but we all relate on the one thing, that we all have a problem drinking. Mm-hmm. And the issue I've always had was the God part of the program.
I've had a few. I can hear that because I'm an atheist, and it's always something that kind of initially hearing about AA and NA, it kind of tweaked me a little. And I've had clients come in, and it's been a battle is the wrong word, but it's maybe been an internal battle for several clients being able to fully commit to AA or NA or any, just because of that, just saying like, I don't believe in God.
I don't either.
Power. Yeah.
I don't believe in God. I believe that when you die, your lights out, that's it. It's done. Yeah. And I think that we all have this concept. Well, okay, this is my opinion. So, but I really do believe that people have a concept of a higher power because it comforts them in life. Because the idea that when this is over, that's all there is a pretty sad idea. So what's going to be more comforting when you're in life? Well, when I'm dead, I'm going to have this great place that I'm going to go to, and I'm going to be there with my family. And it's a beautiful idea. Yeah. I don't fully believe it in my heart. I believe that what I do in the world now is what I'm going to be doing. And I've got one chance to go through this. So I really want to make the most of it. I do believe in spirituality, though. I do believe in being spiritual. I believe in energy. I believe we all share common energy. I probably have more of an extraterrestrial view of things, or more of a... I do believe in energy, and I believe more of a... I guess if I was to look at Buddhism, it'd probably be more attracted to that than if I had to pick a religion. I'd probably be. Well,
that's why I was asking, because the way that you speak, you touch on a lot of. And again, I'm not a Buddhist by any stretch of the imagination, but like I've done a lot of meditation and taught it and attended a bunch of workshops on mindfulness, and you hit a lot of those. Just the way that you speak sounds very kind of touches a lot of that sort of Buddhism.
I remember when I was in Hawaii, I was in this place called Paia, which is like a surfer town. Yeah. And I walked into a Buddhist temple. And I remember I was with two of my friends and my wife. And my wife and I walked in. My two friends didn't want to go in. They're like, oh, this is weird. And I walked in, and I immediately felt something when I was in there. I was like, wow, this is really rad. Yeah. And I was like, I like this vibe. I like these people. And I left. But I mean, it was really, really cool. And I've always had that kind of that feeling with Buddhism. But I'm not religious. By any stretch of the word.
So what's your higher power?
My higher power is that voice in my head that tells me right from wrong, which I've always had. I know instinctively what's right and what's wrong. And it's whether I choose to listen to it or not. Yeah. And I believe that we all have that voice in us. I really do believe that we instinctively know what's right from wrong. Now, you could say that people with mental illness might have a different voice. There's all kinds of interpretations on that. But personally, my higher power is my voice that tells me right from wrong. Like, I know when I'm going to do something if it's wrong or if it's the right thing to do. Yeah. And it's whether when I get home at 12:30 at night, and I've been going to the gym for, 3 times a week for a month, and I'm hungry, and I, take that bagel out of the freezer and I eat it at 1 a.m, I know I shouldn't be doing that. I should have a glass of water and go to bed instead. And then I'm like, fuck it. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's little things like that. So I have the voice. I have the voice of reason. It's just if I choose to listen to it or not.
Yeah. Yeah, it's getting in touch with.
But I also don't go crazy with it. 9 times out of 10, I eat the bagel.
Well, there's balance in all things. Balance, and I think the thing that's most important is, it's something I talk about a lot is it's not a line that I came up with, but it was at a conference I was attending, was the dignity of risk. Okay. And that as adults, we have the right to make decisions that are bad for us. Yeah. And that's just our right. For people that, in the context of this conference, it was more for people with disabilities, that we often take away their right to make bad decisions for themselves. We don't let them smoke a cigarette. We don't let them go on a date with someone we think is sketchy. Right. And that we're robbing them of a certain dignity in that way. Absolutely. And when it comes to the dignity of risk, the step that I like to take a little bit further than that is making at least a conscious decision. Yeah. That when so many of our bad decisions, we're just an autopilot. We're just on that hamster wheel. We're not really paying attention. We just have an impulse, we do. Yeah. And then someone asks us afterwards why we did it, and we're like, I don't know. I don't know, or we make some crap up. And I think the effort, or really the goal, is to be able to get to the point where it's a real decision, where you can tell yourself, you can hear that little voice, you can query that little voice, and just be like, okay, no, this is a bad idea. Fucking I'm gonna do it anyway, or no, I'm gonna listen to this, but at least it's something that's a decision that you can own the consequences of. Yeah. And
I find that I get better and better at making those decisions.
And what do you think has helped kind of get you in touch with that voice?
Years of just making the bad decisions, I guess, and having kids. Kids really, for me, are like a mirror.
Yeah.
I look at my kids. I look what my kids go through. I look how I have to be for my kids, or how I aspire to be for my kids. And I think kids have really showed me to.
How do you deal, because I think about, even when you're mentioning the social anxiety and the feeling an outsider and kind of dating that as being, the start of the addiction.
Yeah.
And I remember going, I had a lot of social anxiety as a kid, and I remember seeing my older daughter at some point, maybe when she was 4 years old or something, and we were at a park. And there were these older girls. There was only 2 other kids there. And they were maybe 7 years old, cool 7-year-old girls. And so my 4-year-old goes over, and she's hovering kind of around them. She's just doing this kind of approach withdrawal thing. And it's clear that she's like, oh my God, those are big kids.
Yeah.
They're really cool. I want to hang out with them. But I had no idea how to get in there.
Yeah.
And I was watching her look at them. And it hit me like a ton of bricks, that kind of flash of when I was a kid, of just that being
Absolutely.
like, I want to join in, and all that anxiety inside and feeling like an outsider, not knowing how to get in. And my heart just broke into a million pieces.
Happens to me all the time.
And it took a lot for me to kind of pause myself and be like, you know what, she's not me.
Yeah.
That's not me.
Yeah.
That's her. And let her live her life and have her experiences. And I don't need to put my shit on her.
Yeah.
But given that was such an important, such a trigger for you, and it was something that was so important, that pain is what drove so much more pain kind of going forward afterwards. Is this something you feel you're particularly attuned to with your kids, that type of social connection, being like an outsider?
Yeah. I remember being with my son maybe 3-4 years ago, and he was at the pool, and he hung out with he was hanging out with a kid that was older because they were family friends. The parents, like his mom and the other kid's mom, were friends. So they would be together a lot on the weekends. So it was, and I think this kid just graduated high school, and my son's he's in grade 8 now, going into grade 9. So there's maybe 3-4 year difference. Which,
and at that age, it's like dog years.
It's huge. Nowadays, my wife's 14 years younger than me. I don't even think of that anymore.
Once you hit past mid-20s, it
doesn't
blends
matter.
a little bit more.
Right.
But yeah, when you're little, it's infinite.
He was at the pool with him and this kid's friend who was the same age as him, and his mom had told me that they were kind of snubbing him.
Okay.
And
ouch.
Yeah, I know. And so I kind of observed it. I watched because I was there waiting for him to finish the swim lesson and do swim team, and I'm watching, and I'm seeing the 2 kids walk away, and I'm seeing him. I see my son walking over to try to get a word in, and they're kind of like snubbing him. And so when he goes into the changing room, and they go into the changing room, and as we're walking out, I see the 2 kids on their bikes, and one of the kids' name is Kyle.
Yeah.
And my son loves South Park.
Yeah.
So I walk by, and the kids are like, they're being like, typical cool kids. And my son's with me, and I go, hey, Kyle, how's it going, Kyle? Hey, Kyle. And the kid looks at me and it's like petrified. It's like, what's going on, Kyle? How you doing, buddy? Yeah, screw you, Kyle. And then we walk away, and my son is laughing. And I looked at him, and I go, yeah, And he laughed. And I know that it meant a lot to him to do that. But then I'm like, well, I wasn't really bullying the kid. I was just going, hey, what's going on, Cal? I was like screwing around. But, you're an adult, and you don't give a fuck what anybody thinks about you.
No. I have to say, it's one of the best parts.
Feelings ever.
Oh, my goodness. I love every time people tell me, don't you wish you were still a teenager
hell
again?
no.
I'm like,
I'm 47. My mom is almost 70, and she tells me, she goes, that part, she goes, it just gets better.
Really?
She goes, the older you get, the less you give a shit about
I'm
what
37, and I love this side of 30.
Oh, it just gets better.
Great. I just give zero fucks now.
Yeah. Like, I really don't care. And but I remember I felt for him, and I really, really felt for him. But at the same time, I'm like, it's his journey. He's got to figure out his thing. But it's fun when you're able to be there for your kids in little situations like that. And I've done that for my daughter too.
Yeah.
A couple of times where, my daughter's felt a certain thing with, her friends, and I'll just be goofy, and it'll make her laugh, and it just kind of breaks the ice. But they're kids, and I'm at a point now where I'm watching my son just turned 14, and he's heading into grade 9, and that's like, for me, it's like the danger zone. Like,
right.
Grade 9's the age where everything changed for me.
Yep. Yeah.
So
yeah, if I think about it too, grade 9 is when,
it's when
grade
everything
10 is when the
changed.
shit went down.
Yeah, it's when everything starts, like very good chance by the time, grade 9 into 10, everything's going to change for him.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, hold on. Like, I'm like white knuckling. No, come on. Don't go too far. But, you just got to let them go through it. And that's the hardest thing for me.
And what do you feel is important to, because you've had now 26 years of sobriety.
Yeah.
So you've had you've had the experience, and it seems like you've done a lot of introspection, a lot of thought about your journey and
Yeah.
about that. And that's, largely what got you here. What do you feel is most, if you're talking, what's the piece of advice or what's the stuff that you feel is the most important to instill in your kids?
Always do what you love. Follow your heart. Be good to people. I always tell my kids, be loving and be good to people. Just always treat people really, really well. Don't ever treat anyone like shit, and don't ever walk on anyone, and always treat people with respect. That's the thing I instill in my kids the most, is just to love and to respect people as much as you can. And as hard as it is sometimes,
Yeah.
you have to do it, because it's the thing that's really, really going to get you further ahead, because you'll feel better. And always help people. Like, I'm all about helping people as much as you can, even when you don't want to. I mean, there's some people that I've worked with, and there's people that I really live by that kill 'em with kindness thing. I really think it's worked for me. And but if you genuinely are a loving human being and you love people, which I do, I'm a people person. I'm just passionate about so many things, and I'm passionate about people, and I just like seeing people do well. And I don't look at it like money doesn't drive me. And I tell my kids that too. You can't be driven by money. You can't chase money. Money's important. You need money. You have to value your time, which I do. But and I put a value on my time, but at the same time, you can't just do things for money.
Yeah.
You have to really find happiness first, and the rest will fall into place. And that's pretty much been my path, and it's worked out so far, knock on wood.
And if it's something that you can give, if you, at your age now and with your perspective now, if you can go back in time and you could see yourself as a kid or as a teen, and you could just, have that one conversation, give your little self, your young self, that one piece of advice, the thing that you're like, frick, I wish I knew then, that would have changed everything. What do you wish you had told yourself?
Well, I don't have many regrets, to be honest. I really don't. But
Yeah.
I have a couple. I have one. One's I got into the Dawson Theater program,
Yeah.
which meant a lot to me at the time, and I completely messed that up.
Yeah.
Dropped out, left. Again, the authority thing.
Yeah.
I did my first year. It was a 3-year program. I did my first year, and after my first year, they held me back, and they said, "We've passed everything, but we really think that we see a lot of potential in you as an actor. We think you should stay and redo your first year again." So I did.
Okay.
And I did fairly well. Not great, but I did well enough that they were like, you've really proven that you can work at this level. It's great. And then I had my review at the end of the year, and it was glowing. And I said, great, so I can perform at your level now? And they said, yes. And I said, great, I'm leaving. So it's like one of these things where I kind of always regret not finishing that. I wish I would have finished that, because it meant a lot to me. And I ended up going on and doing a bunch of stuff in music, and I'm really happy with everything I've done, and I'm proud, but I regret not finishing that. I wish I would have finished that. So I would have probably given myself a kick in the ass then.
Okay.
And in sobriety, when I was in my band, we had a chance to work with a producer,
Yeah.
a really good producer, and guaranteed the trajectory of the band would have changed. And we did really well, but it would have been a different route. And I kind of wish I would have taken that opportunity instead of saying, now we're going to write our own songs. He wanted to come in as a 5th songwriter.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't really regret anything,
Okay.
because everything else that happened shaped me. And even those two things shaped me into being the person I am.
Yeah.
I don't regret having my kids, even though I never really wanted kids, because my kids have shown me so much and have given me so much. But I was never one of these people that grew up saying, I want to be a dad.
Yeah.
Like, I really didn't want to be a dad. I didn't care.
Okay.
But when I was put in a situation where I'm going to be a dad, I did everything I needed to do to be a dad. I stopped doing everything in music. I immediately got a day job, and I was a dad.
Yeah.
So I took the responsibility seriously, but I think it was never something that I really was like, oh, I want to be a dad.
And just when it did arrive, it was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm taking
Here
this seriously. Absolutely. Because I said, there's no way I'm going to screw this kid up.
Yeah.
And I haven't, thank God. They're both really well adjusted. Like, my kids are great.
Yeah.
But I really took it seriously. But it's ironic that I was never one of these guys that wanted to be a family. And it's funny now because my kids are kind of, they're with me half. And
Okay.
I'm married, and my ex and I get along really, really well.
Great.
Like we all co-parent very well together, the three parents.
Yeah.
Like my wife, myself, and my ex.
Great.
All co-parent really well because my kids' mom and I, Carmen and I, both come from broken homes. So we both said we never wanted to screw our kids up. Even if it didn't work out with us, we wanted to always be on the same page for them, and we are.
Yeah.
And there's so much love with all of us. It's great.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, it's funny because my wife always jokes, and she says, you know, I think you would have been fine not having kids. And I'm like, yeah, but I do, and I love them.
Yeah.
But it's funny, and a lot of people won't admit that.
That they wouldn't have otherwise.
Oh,
had
no.
kids.
I mean, I've talked to so many parents that just don't want to admit that, and they put the brave face on. It's like, be honest. Do you know what I mean? Be honest. There's times where it sucks.
Yeah. Well, once you have the kids.
Yeah. Oh my
Oh,
God.
yeah.
There's times where it's awful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's
Yes. Well, there's all sorts of evidence that happiness declines significantly during childbearing, like during child having years.
Yeah, I
and
mean-
kind of starts to peak back after, around the years after kids start to leave home. But it was interesting just hearing a talk on this at one point. It was saying, well, yeah, maybe your happiness is going to go down because there's so much more that matters to you. You know, like when you have kids, when you're single or you don't have kids, there's not a whole lot that's so important. Like, what are you going to argue with your partner about? Like, what movie you're going to watch?
Right.
Like, what you're going to have for dinner? Maybe you will argue with them anyway, but it's nothing of such importance or consequence.
No.
Then all of a sudden you have a kid, and especially when they're little, you're just like, oh my God, you're going to die at any minute. Like, you're fragile. You're
Yeah.
this. They
Yep.
get sick. They get colds. They get stressed at school.
Yeah.
They have tantrums. They, have crap up their back going out their diapers and stuff. And there's so much more sleep deprivation and stress, but also more meaning. All of a sudden, what you do really matters on a different level.
That's what and it changes immediately.
Yeah.
In my head, it changed immediately when I had my son. Everything changed in my head, and I was already prepping for it because I knew I had heard enough stories.
Yeah.
That I knew things were going to change, and it changed immediately. I was immediately. It's almost like you have to become selfless for a while.
Yeah.
And I did, and I forgot who I was, and I just went on autopilot in a way and did what I had to do. And I'm glad I did that because it brought me into another part of my life and to a complete other career. I would never have been doing the things I'm doing now if I would have continued with music.
Well, let me ask you about that in terms of continuing with music. So you were in Slaves on Dope for how long? So you guys have stopped touring for a while?
We've been a band for 25 years.
25 years.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So we've been in a band for a long time.
Do you still perform now at all, or?
When we can and when I want to.
Okay.
And I'm really selective with when we do. It's got to be a good opportunity, or it's got to be, and it's okay. I mean, and both my guitar player and I, it's him and I that are in the band. The other two guys are, I don't want to say they're hired guns, but they're they're in the band. They perform. They don't really participate much in the writing. It's him and I that write now.
Okay.
It's different people than when we started the band. I think we're on our third rhythm section now.
Yeah.
And it's a totally different thing than when it was, but it's still a big part of me. But it's a different part of me now.
Do you find that that's been tough to maintain your sobriety in the music industry?
No.
Do you find it's because there's a lot of there's a lot of talk about how, especially in the entertainment industry, that it's really kind of breeds that type of party lifestyle?
Oh, I mean, I was around
excess.
I was around all of it.
Yeah.
For years, and I still am around it. If if we go play a festival or something, or if I'm backstage somewhere, although I don't see it as much as I used to, but because a lot of the bands are older, but when I was the summer that I did Ozfest, I was around. I was around Pantera, I was around Ozzy Osbourne, I was around Tommy Lee. I mean, these are all notorious people that are just, are known for partaking.
Yes.
And it was never a struggle for me because I was solid in my sobriety. I mean, I knew it's never been a decision for me that I was gonna go back on. It's
Did you
never
feel
been
like an outsider then in that? Because I can see how, if you're going to go party with, with other big names, if you're going to party with these guys, you're going to interact with them. It's, I don't know, even just on a very, very basic level. Like if I go out to a bar and everybody's drunk and I'm the sober one, or I've had a drink or two, it just feels weird.
The only thing that would feel weird is that after a couple of hours of being with people that are hammered or inebriated, you just don't really want to be around them anymore, no matter who they are. You know?
Yeah.
You could have someone who's super famous and they're slurring their words in front of you. It's just like, okay. Like,
pretty much I hit that about half an hour in. I'm like, all right.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Have a great night,
like,
guys.
There's nothing and I'm notorious for this now, is that when I have to be somewhere, I show up on time. And when I'm done, I leave.
Yeah.
I'm not a lingerer. The one commodity that I don't have to spare is time.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I'm a stickler with. If you waste my time, I can't stand my time being wasted. And I mean, Fernando, who's recording this, knows. I mean, we worked on a show together.
Yeah.
I would have big names to call in, and if they were 5-10 minutes, I'd give them 5-10 minutes, no matter who it was. 10 minutes, 12 minutes late, I'm out. I got stuff to do, and it's not that I'm high and mighty. It's just I value my time.
Yeah.
Because I don't like, and when someone wastes my time, it's probably the biggest pet peeve that I have.
Yeah.
Don't waste my time.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I'm sure you're very busy too.
Yeah.
In time, and I manage my time fairly well.
No, I get Richard with that. There's certain people that I've told him, you have 5, like, even friends. I'm like,
yeah.
you have 5 minutes. And if you're 6 minutes late, I won't be there.
Yeah.
I'm going to go.
Yeah, no, I don't have any time for that anymore.
Yeah.
And it's good because I don't have the circle that I hang with all understand that, and it's respect. And and that's one of the band things that I have a hard time with, is that when we have to do stuff and someone is late for a rehearsal, it's like, oh no, you don't get it, man. Like I
got shit to do.
Way too much shit to do to be sitting around doing this. So that's probably why I've kind of shied away from doing more music stuff, and I've focused more on my own career and doing my own things, because it's way easier to manage myself than to manage 3 other personalities in myself.
Yeah. And so you feel you've been able to manage. So you've been able, when you went and you started touring much more and the band hit, a lot more popularity, you were already pretty solid on your feet.
Yeah, by the time we moved to LA, because when I really look at it as the band before LA and after LA. And before LA, we were just touring Canada, spinning our wheels, trying to get something going. And then we finally just all looked at each other and said, if we're going to make a go at this, we got to move.
Yeah.
So we all got in a van and we moved to Los Angeles, and no work papers, nothing, worked under the table. I valet parked at LAX. And within 3 months, we were offered a bunch of record deals.
Wow.
And almost a year from when we moved there, we were on Ozfest, and we were on Sharon Osbourne's record label in Aussie. And we had done it. We had achieved what we wanted to achieve. But it was very, it was one of these things where we really, really had to make that decision and just go for it. And there's a lot of fear.
Yeah, no doubt.
And but I'm glad I did it. And I look at it now and I'm like, I would never fucking do that now. Like, what was I thinking? And it's, sometimes you go through these things in your life and you don't, you're like, where did I get the courage to do that? Where did I get my wife and I just renovated a duplex. We bought a duplex in the Southwest.
Yeah.
And 2 5.5s, 1910 building. We stripped it.
Yeah.
Completely and turned it into a single house. It was our dream.
Big job. Yeah.
We did it in 4 months. And we did all the demo ourselves, and then I helped out on all the, on when the place was being rebuilt inside. I helped out. I was there every single day, and I worked, and I filmed a TV show.
Yeah,
and I did this, and I had my kids, and we talk about it sometimes, and we like, how did we do that? And sometimes you just got to put one foot in front of the other and do it. And I learned that
from that one day at a time.
I learned that from AA. I learned that from being in a band and being with guys that were really motivated and had a great attitude. So I'm really lucky. I have a really good work ethic. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things I see my kids, and I see my daughter is pretty good, and my son needs a little work with it. So that kind of worries me. I'm like, I want you have to develop work ethic. You have to have a good work ethic.
Yeah. And so developmentally, then they're right on track.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I had to show my son my old report cards because he was feeling really down about this year because he squeaked by. And I said to him, you got 3 more years of high school. I know you hate it. I never liked it either. And I'm really transparent. I say to them, especially my daughter's not an issue because she just loves school. But my son hates it. He sees what I do and he's like, I just want to do what you do and fun stuff. And I'm like, well, it's still work, but you got to get through high school, at least get through high school. And then we can decide together what you want to do, or you can decide what you want to do, but you got to finish high school. And as much as it sucks, just get through.
Yeah, you got to pay your dues and
I would
before you can have more choice.
And I'm not one of these parents that's going to ride him. Like, again, it's are you trying as hard as you can? I'd rather him look at himself and go, I don't think I tried that hard, and realize it than have me, browbeat them and like, no, you gotta succeed. Listen, if you hate math, you hate math.
Yeah.
And I can't sit there and say, well,
no, you don't. You actually love it, and this is great.
No,
and it's
but at the same time, sometimes you have to force through, and you come out at the other end if you put a bit of work in, you'll actually surprise yourself. But I had to show him my grades.
Yeah.
And it was really funny to look back at my report cards. He's like, how do you get a 15 in something? I found a way.
You're like, I worked hard, even then.
No, I mean,
I'm
like, how did I get through high school?
Yeah.
And I did. I don't know how I did it, though.
But somehow you did.
I did.
And what do you say? So when you're...
It's still a mystery to me, but I didn't repeat a year.
Yeah, interesting. It's interesting with 15s that you didn't repeat a year.
I don't know. Yeah.
Do you, when you meet, back to some of the stuff in the industry, when you meet younger performers, because you're saying now you don't see, you'll still see the excesses, but not quite as much because now you're kind of hanging with an older crowd when you're, other times you're performing.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm around a lot of young bands because of my job at CHOM.
And when you are around kind of younger bands and, because there's a big reputation in the music industry and actually in cooking, like for chefs as well, that... of just a culture of excess, and that it's very hard. And then a lot of people really just go down the rabbit hole once they get into that. They're talented, they get into it, and then they start to really struggle with addiction at that point and fall deeper and deeper in. What do you ever find yourself in a mentorship position over
Always.
Younger? And what do you end up telling them when they're in that position, when you're meeting young performers and they're just getting into that, they're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and coming in with...
The way I approach it is I'm usually just transparent. I'm very transparent about my sobriety. I don't have anything to hide. Like it's, I know Alcoholics Anonymous is an anonymous program. And, but at the same time, if I remain too anonymous, I'm not going to be able to help anyone. I'm in a position where people know who I am and people know my brand. Like my brand is sobriety. So I'll get one of two things. I'll get people that'll dumb down how much they drink or how much they use because they're embarrassed. Or I'll get the ones that'll be like, what can I do? How do I get over this? So sometimes along these people's journeys, I'll have planted seeds that a couple of years later, I'll get a message from someone saying, hey, I'm having a hard time. And I'll smile. I'll be like, okay. Yeah. And I'll say, well, yeah, I kind of noticed when you came in that you guys were a little happy, but hey, I never judge. I always make people feel somewhat safe. I never want to judge anyone. I never, because I'm not judging because I understand it. I get it, but I'm always there to help if someone needs help. Always.
So you leave the door open.
Always.
And do you tend to really encourage AA specifically, like for?
I mean, it's what worked for me.
Okay.
I know.
So there's been some controversy about, is AA really effective? Is it hyped up? Is it?
I'll tell you.
The other thing.
I think anyone that does any research will see. It's great to go to a rehab, and it's great to have yourself, if you can afford it.
Yeah.
Transplanted from a situation and put into an ideal one and have all that around you for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. But eventually
you have to go back to the real world.
You got to go back to the real world. And for me, as far as I know, and I could be wrong, but Alcoholics Anonymous is the most effective. And most of the 12-step groups are 12-step groups. How many groups have spun off from the 12 steps of AA? How many rehabs, self-help groups have used what they, AA is really, really, it's my North Star. So if I was going to have any kind of a religion that I believed in, it would probably be AA. I mean, it's so simple because it's a recipe for success in any area of my life. And I use it in every area of my life. Professionally, I'll take inventories. I'll look at my I'll do a 4-step, 5th step. My 10th step, I'm constantly doing it in my life. If I harm someone, I apologize. If I was rude to someone, I apologize. I don't hang on to resentment. I let it go. These are all things that I don't think if I didn't work these things, I would be successful in any way. And my kids too. I mean, my son will get upset. He'll scream. He'll go up to his room, slam his door. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'll get into it with him. Sometimes I'll sit back. Most of the time he comes down the stairs and gives me a hug and says, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Because he understands it. He knows and he gets it. And I think he's learned that from us.
Okay. It's fantastic. So it's really been something that's given you a lot of structure
absolutely.
Going over your life. It's just giving you that kind of guidepost. It's nice to have those.
I mean, controversy, listen, I think a lot of people have, the weird thing with AA is that it's a nonprofit. thing.
Yeah.
There's no money to be made in it. I know a lot of people that have taken what they've learned in AA and they've gone out and made a lot of money with it. Mm-hmm. And I know the position that I'm in, I could make a lot of money with what I know. Mm-hmm. But I refuse to do that. I can't.
Yeah, because it feels like it betrays the principles.
Yeah, it's like bands. Like I've done so much stuff in music and I have so much experience and I've been around so many different people and been in so many situations. I've had bands come up to me and say, "Well, would you want to manage us?" And I'm like, I'd probably be a really good band manager, but I don't want to make money off of a band. Like I'll give you advice. I'll tell you where to go, and I'll if you need a contact or meet. But I just like music and sobriety. I have a hard time. I don't know. It's just a weird thing.
Okay, because it's so integral. Like service is so integral to you
it's
to be
important.
able to give back.
Absolutely.
That once the money component gets mixed in, it starts to feel like
Yeah,
this isn't really. Then you're doing it for money and not for helping.
Right.
That's what
like
it ends up feeling
it's
like.
one thing. Like someone asked me to do like if I voice work, I get paid for.
Yeah.
Podcasts, I'll get paid for.
Yeah.
Someone wants me to host an event. I used to say yes to so many things. Now, no, I need to get paid for that. It's my time.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'll bring something to your event, but if we're doing a charity and the sound guy's getting paid and the band guy's getting paid, but oh no, you're going to do it because you're a nice guy. Well, no. I mean, it comes to a point where it's like, yes, I do have charities that I give my time to, but they're selective and I know where the money goes, and you have to have some kind of you have to have principles, and you have to have your limits for certain things.
Do you, and I guess there's just one more thing I want to get into, given how integral AA has been for you, and you're right, there is a lot of evidence for, treatment for addictions is tricky generally.
Well, the thing is,
the 12-step programs are some decent evidence along with cognitive behavior therapy and motivational enhancement. What do you feel about some of the harm reduction stuff that's being proposed? Because AA, has an abstinence model, and it's, the goal is really, there's no, as far as I'm aware, there's no safe and okay level of drinking or of substance use. It's a problem and you don't do it.
Well, the thing is, there's no one judges you on your drinking. No one judges you on how much you drink.
But the end goal is still not right? It's still an abstinence model.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's all based on the philosophy that it's an allergy.
Yeah,
that's an allergic reaction. And Dr. William Silkworth was the one that they went to consult with to get some kind of a physician's stamp of approval. And they what he said, he goes, look, I've witnessed all these alcoholics, and what I see is that they suffer from some kind of an allergic reaction, that when they drink, they cannot stop.
Okay.
That there is an obsession that happens when you have one drink that will lead you to the races eventually if you admit that you have that issue. So I've had many talks with my wife, 25, 26 years into sobriety. Could I go out and have a beer? When I was about 20 years sober, all these non-alcoholic beers started coming out. And I said to myself, I really want to try a non-alcoholic beer.
Yeah.
But I was worried it would be a trigger.
Yeah.
So I eventually tried one.
And?
No, it's not a trigger. It's like once I'm on a second one, I'm like, this is like fizzy water. I don't want to have any more of these. But it's nice to be able to have that option and say, I can go have a non-alcoholic beer once in a while. If I'm out somewhere, I can have that, and it doesn't affect me because I don't want to drink. I don't want to get high.
Yeah. When you want to do everything you can to not get back into that place and to stay where you are because you're feeling like...
So I think for me, the abstinence part, I don't want to mess with it at this point. Do you know what I mean? Like,
well, and then for you, for sure, it's been integral. But then, do you feel like, because there's more and more talk over time about government, changing government policies and really pushing, safe injection sites and really, decriminalizing substances. Cannabis soon is supposed to be decriminalized. How do you feel about those initiatives where?
I think they're great.
Okay.
I think they need to be. I think when you've got SAQs that are everywhere, that are government run, that are pretty much selling legal alcohol to everyone, then why wouldn't you do the same thing with cannabis? Okay. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be an interesting shift.
Yep.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens, but I don't think there's anything wrong with it personally. I mean, I think it's fantastic. I mean, I think the idea of decriminalizing it and having it available, like, people are going to go look for it no matter what.
Yeah.
So if
you don't want to turn people into criminals,
if you can get people away from the criminal element, and they can just go by, I mean, it seems to have worked in Washington. It seems to have worked in Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great that we're doing it. I think it's great that we're one of the first countries to do it.
Yeah. And so,
but I don't want to smoke.
Right.
I think it's a complete waste of time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just life goes by so quick, as you know.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to do is not be present for it. I want to be here for all of it. I want to feel it. Do you know what I mean?
The highs and the lows.
Yeah, because that's part of it. Now, I've gotten my greatest highs, and they've not been from putting substances in my body. It's been from experiencing certain things. It's been from from seeing something happen. Like I like experiencing things on life's terms.
Yeah.
That's just how I like to live.
You got to be fully present through it all.
Yeah.
Which again is very, very Buddhist and very mindful in there.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm going to sell you on meditation.
There's a little
here at some
Buddhist
point,
in you there.
somewhere in there. Yeah. So just to wrap up, if you can give one piece of advice, one thing going forward. So there's particularly to, there's a lot of people who are struggling with addiction, who are struggling with the isms. There's a crisis in terms of opioid addiction and fentanyl.
Yeah.
If you can give one piece of advice to people that are really struggling right now and don't really know what their North Star is yet, don't know what direction to go, you can give that one piece of advice, what would you give?
If you really feel like you're struggling, make that first effort to do something about it. If you're at a point where you think there might be a problem, there's a good chance there is. I don't know too many people that have come to AA and have not had a problem. In fact, most of the people that walk in have a problem. They might have problems in other areas of their life, but it's the catalyst to start looking at what's going on. Because the thing is, once you come to AA once, you've ruined your drinking. You're never going to drink the same. That's just, it's evidence. I mean, because you've admitted that there's an issue. You're there. Once you get a bit of program in you, Now, it might be a great thing that'll stop you from killing yourself. And you'll start saying, okay, I came to AA, I went for a year, I got a lot out of it, but I started drinking a little bit. But at least you know that if things start to go the other direction, you have a bit of that program in you. So you probably know what to do more than you did before. But once you go to a meeting, it's the expression we have, like AA spoils your drinking. It's never going to be the same. You're never going to be able to drink with impunity because you're going to know that there's an issue.
Yeah, there's an issue and there's things that you can do.
But that's the whole thing about the step, like, admitting you have a problem. Like once you admit that you have a problem, there's a huge sense of relief. At least for me there was. Because it's like, like there's this expression, it's kind of vulgar, but you've got 1 foot in yesterday, 1 foot in today, and your balls are on the fence. And it hurts, so you got to jump on one side.
I hate it when my balls are on the fence. It's just
that's what I meant.
bummer,
But I prefaced it with saying it was a bit vulgar. But it's you've got, at one point you have to make a decision, and like anything in life, once when you're struggling with a decision, once you've made the decision, it's so much easier, right?
Yeah.
But it's that
There's
decision.
a certain peace that comes at that
okay.
point. Whatever the decision is, or whatever the consequences, just knowing that you did something, you made a choice.
You made a decision. It's like, okay, that's good. Like, at least I made a decision. But when you're like in between, it's like in a relationship, when you're in a crappy relationship and you finally make that decision, okay, I'm going to have that talk tonight and we're done. Mm-hmm. It's going to be hard, but you'll get through it. And then once you get through it, you're like,
it's like a weight.
Wow.
Yeah. Just lift it off.
It's so much easier. So it's the same thing with any kind of addiction. Once you make that decision and you do something about it, it's incredible the weight that's lifted. But you got to do it, and that's the scary part. And it goes back to that fear.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and being able to ride through it and keep focused on what's important to you and just taking a step in that direction.
Yeah, because I wouldn't trade my best days high for my worst days sober. Ever.
Thank you so much, Jason. It's been really fantastic talking to you.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And thanks very much to Jason Rockman, CHOM FM, Slaves on Dope, CTV News Channel, very busy guy, Comic-Con as well. He was the spokesperson for the Comic-Con festivals here in Eastern Canada. And so, Sam, what did you think of Jason and his story?
I think we had a really great chat. He's a really down to earth guy and really open, and it's a pleasure to be able to talk to somebody, particularly who has who's in the entertainment industry, who has who has a name, who has a reputation to maintain to a certain extent, who's willing to be just so candid and really just get into what his personal demons were, what his path has been. And it was really just, and I really appreciate his openness and his willingness to engage in this talk and share his journey.
A couple of takeaways for me. One was his insistence on doing the program his way. Do you see this a lot? Do people sort of take the AA program or the NA program and adapt it so that they can sort of feel philosophically more comfortable with it?
I think it's something that's still part of the program, that the program has still readily embraced, is the higher power. And although it started off in a Christian tradition, I think there's been an emphasis to be able to include so many different people. They've, as far as I'm aware, they've really made a big effort to have a pretty flexible definition of what a higher power is and let people define it for themselves, just to be able to include more people and include more people that could really need and benefit from it. So I find it interesting. I always find it interesting, particularly for people that don't take the higher power as God, to just see what they set their higher power as, because that's something that really speaks a lot to them, and it's just really interesting to see where people get their power and their grounding and their strength from.
And that seems to come from his own inner voice, but also I noticed from his kids. His kids seem to be a great source of motivation for self-improvement.
Yeah, well, I think that for, something we were getting into before, I think that, he went on an interesting path where he didn't want kids going forward. And then once he had them, he really, went fully deep into that role. And I think that, as a parent, I think one thing that's fantastic about having kids, among the many other things, is that sense of something mattering, of having these little people that are just so important and that you're just so invested in, pardon my language, not fucking up. Like, you want them to have a good life and to have a better life than you did. And there's something about that that's really grounding.
Finally, Samantha, what would you say is a good rule of thumb if you're trying to determine if you are addicted to any kind of substance? And where's the first place you should go if you determine that you are?
I think in terms of recognizing addiction, I think the first thing to be aware of is if you find yourself asking the question, do I have a problem? Do I need help? As Jason said, as I tell my clients, if you're asking the question, you probably already have the answer. In which case, it doesn't hurt to take that first step. If you do end up walking into a group, or you talk to your family doctor, or you talk to a counselor, and you say, I'm concerned that this is a problem, it's not going to cost you anything but your time at that point. And it's worth it to have the extra help and the advice. And in terms of thinking, what could the first steps be if you have a problem and you want to go get help, or you want to get better informed, you can go into one of the groups, one of the 12-step programs. In terms of the evidence, what seems to be most effective for addiction is the 12-step programs, something called motivational enhancement and cognitive behavior therapy. So you can talk to your family doctor, you can go pop in a 12-step meeting, you look online, you'll find a bunch of them, or you can look for a counselor or a mental health provider that has expertise in dealing with addiction. And if you're not sure which mental health provider to use or to seek out, ask to talk to them for a few minutes first. See who you feel most comfortable with, who seems like they know what they're talking about, who you feel at ease with. Because with any mental health provider that you're going to be working with, you got to trust them. And if you don't feel comfortable and you don't trust them, it's not going to work. So, listen to your gut and go with that.
All right, and next time on the Goldwaters, Anne France will get political, talking about Montreal as a city-state and some Quebec politics, so stay tuned for that. Don't forget, you can drop us a line anytime, talk@thegoldwaters.ca, and you can also interact with us on social media, on Facebook and Twitter, @thegoldwaters. Thanks very much, Dr. Sam.
My pleasure, Dan.
Don't forget, you can listen to past episodes of The Goldwaters at thegoldwaters.ca and join the conversation on Facebook or Twitter with the hashtag #TheGoldwaters. And email us if there's something that you want to chat about or something that you believe the Goldwaters should examine. Our email address is talk@thegoldwaters.ca. I'm Dan Delmar. Until next time.
This has been a production of KR Media. Good talk.